my favor, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing absent from your lives that are needed. I have been doing chores. This is not about the Middle East. This is not about my music or my comedy. This is a quick, hopefully quick, explanation of why we see the religious atmosphere that we see today. All right. Um, I did a whole set of podcasts. It'll be Raven Kiefer, No Apologies Enough Said. Should be able to find it anywhere. My podcasts are on, good Lord, I think they're on like 40 or 50 different podcast repeater sites like Podbeam and Podcast Addict and wherever. All right. Of course, some platforms will edit them because they don't want things out. I'll be surprised how long this one stays up. Okay, first thing I'm going to bring up is a very, very, very good book. It's called Being Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh. All right. It's Thik. It's Being Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh. It's Thik Nhat Hanh, H-A-N, or I'm sorry, A-A-H-A-H-N. Thich Nhat Hanh. It's called Being Peace. If you've never read it, now's a good time to read it. He was a Buddhist monk in Vietnam, and he witnessed all the things that happened there. And he wrote that book after. It's one of my favorite books. I don't have a copy right now because every time I get a copy, I'll read it. I'll read through it because I can read it really quick. And then I find somebody who needs it and I give it to them, so I don't have a copy of it right now. Or I'd show you the cover. And the cover has changed through the years. But anyway, it's called Being Peace, and it's written by Thich Nhat Hanh, a Buddhist monk that experienced Vietnam firsthand. If you're not old enough to remember Vietnam, it'll still make sense to you because the world that we're in today, the message is just as appropriate. Now, on religion. Most people who are Christian know the Council of Nicea, and they don't teach about it very much, or they teach about it a lot. The problem with the Council of Nicea, it was the first rewrite of texts under Sabbatine Frankists. Just want to point that out. Sabbatine Frankists had already inserted themselves into the Catholic Church and all the other issues involved in that. So the Council of Nicea deleted texts. That's where we get the Apocrypha and the Lost Books from. It deleted references that you only find in the Apocrypha and the Lost texts. It added emphasis that is contradictory to the original words, the original language, like putting the word Lord in here all over the place, right? In English. I'll get to that. That would be our good friend that translated it to English, used the word Lord continuously. And that's Lord and Baal, B-A-A-L, same meaning. A lot of people don't know that. Anyway, Baal, B-A-A-L, means Lord, right? Marduk was Baal. Anyway, then you also have Baphomet, which is something completely different. But when they went through the Council of Nicea and they decided what they were going to have and what they weren't going to have and what it was going to say, they added emphasis that was contradictory to the original language, the original body. And they conveyed powers to the church by altering things that was absolutely refuted by all the unaltered texts. The church is not the power, never was. The people were the church, not any building, not any organization. But the Sabbatine Frankists couldn't have that, see? Because if they gave up the right to rule over people, then they gave up the right to steal from people, they gave up the right to lie to people, and they gave up the right to control people. Next book, The Art of War. It might be one to read at this point in time if you've never read it. But I also want to point out the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. Okay? If you've never read the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, it's a good text to be familiar with. It's written by the Master Rinpoche. All right, so they're talking about this war being based on religious grounds, and that's where I'm going to start, okay? If you look at Pax Judaica, which is what people are saying is wanting to be brought about, Pax Judaica, by their own letters and writings, would mean that every human being is chipped in some way, whether it be nanotech, or first they would be chipped some way or another. The mark of the beasts for people who are Christians. But anyway, Pax Judaica would require that you be chipped, right, so that you could be tracked and controlled, and the survivors would be slaves. It would be destruction of everybody else, except for the 500,000 that they want for slaves. And don't forget, and this is a very important thing, you can look up, just type in, Zionists spit on Jews, or they did that too, but Zionists spit on Christians in Jerusalem. All right? Not Jews, not Torah-following Judeans. Zionists spit on Christians in Jerusalem. Type it into the search engine. You'll find the videos. Something else that you need to understand is Zionists hate Christians. Zionists hate Christians as much as they hate Muslims. Zionists hate anybody who are not them. They say it openly. And now they're proving it. Well, they've been proving it for decades. But they are carpet bombing the Christian districts in Lebanon as I speak. They have carpet bombed the Christians in Gaza. They have bombed the Christians in Syria. They are bombing Christians in Iran as I speak. That's how much they love Christianity. All right? In Gaza, not only did they bomb Christians, but they destroyed some of the oldest Christian churches on the planet. They bulldozed them, bombed them, ran over them, ran through them with, one of them they ran through with a tank after shooting it with the tank. Christians need to understand this. Zionists in Jerusalem spit on Christians who go there. They have carpet bombed and are continuing to carpet bomb the Christian district in Lebanon. They have sniped, bombed, and destroyed some of the oldest Christian churches in the Middle East. And these are Zionists, not Muslims. All right? Now, they also think that depopulation is the way to control the most number of people. Can't control everybody, but you can control the population. If you get the population low enough, you can control them. Right? I'm going to go right back to the text that the Christians like to quote all the time. They say that they are, but they are not. And they are the money changers. Well, who are the money changers? Money changers and usury spread with Catholicism. It spread with Zionists back when they were Sabbatine Frankists. Of course, the Sabbatine Frankists took over the Catholic Church. That's the reason why usury spread with the Catholic Church, along with this inverted ideologies instead of tolerance. Here's another saying that comes right out of their text. We are at war with principalities and powers, not individual men. Today we have transnationals that are supplying all the wealth and material to the Zionist regimes, not just in the British Protectorate in Palestine. And they are parasites that are designed to destroy us from within and without. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Sound familiar? Now, let's go back here. Most people who are Christian haven't been taught. Most people who are Christian they know about the Council of Nicea in 320. I wrote the dates down so I would make sure that I didn't get them confused. I love the fact that so many people are jumping in and out of here, and when they see that they can't comment and interrupt my show, they go away. But anyway, the Council of Nicea, the first one, was in 325. Then they had the conference in Constantinople, Constantine, Sabbatine Frankists, in 381. And then they had the Chaldean, let me say it correctly, the Chaldean conference in 451. Then they had the third Constantinople Council in 680 to 681, 2 whole years almost. I think it was 18 months. Then they had the conference in Constance from 1414 to 1418, and that one went almost 2 years. Then they had the Vatican II Council in 1962 to 65. Okay, so that's just out of Rome and Constantinople. Okay, it took them until 680 to decide that Jesus was something. His name's Yeshua, if you actually go back and look at the texts. But it took them until 680 to decide that that person should be included in their religion. And of course, they brought in Astarte or Diana or whichever god you want to use as Mary. So that particular group of people have all these statues that they pray to and light candles in front of, and that represents the pantheon. Okay? That's how they incorporated so many religions into Catholicism, is because they adopted the pantheon under whatever guise or name, like the saints, for example. They adopted the pantheon of the old gods into the church so that they could draw in as many as possible. That's one thing that came out of Nicaea and Constantine. So I've talked about ancient history, and I've also mentioned Vatican II in 1962 to 65, right? You remember Vatican III? Anyway, then we have the creation of the Federal Council of Churches. The creation of the Federal Council of Churches in the United States and Canada was in 1908. It was funded by Zionists. It was headed by what would have been a very early and rare form of Zionist Christians. But the important thing here is to understand that the Federal Council of Churches was funded and set up and given priority through Zionist funding out of New York and Chicago. Okay? Then you got the National Council of Churches that was designed to control and direct the teachings, the dialogues, and to provide a uniform system to be given to the parishioners, the people inside those churches. That's not freedom of religion. That's not freedom to explore your faith. That is a controlled message here in the United States. In 1942, the National Association of Evangelicals was created. 1942. The National Association of Evangelicals was created in 1942 and was funded by Zionists out of New York City. That's who financed the council. That's who financed the original meetings. That's who financed the registration and formation of the National Association of Evangelicals. And anybody who doesn't like the truth don't have to listen to me. So, prior to these Zionist-funded organizations, the Federal Council of Churches, National Council of Churches, and the National Association of Evangelicals, prior to the foundation of these organizations, it was taught that the new city of Jerusalem and the new temple would appear with the return of the Messiah. Nobody was going to build a new Jerusalem. Nobody was going to build a new temple in Christianity. Christians, up until the point of the creation of these three associations, and most specifically the National Association of Evangelicals, that was fully funded and set up and formed with Zionist funding and Zionist backing. Not until that point in time had anybody said that the hands of men would rebuild Jerusalem and the temple in Christian churches. There's another question for people who think that evangelicals are what they are. or what they've represented themselves to be. I have to ask you, why did all those years Billy Graham wear a signet of the Catholic Church? Most people wouldn't even notice. Go back and look at the footage of him being on stage, right? Go back and look at the footage of Billy Graham, the evangelical Billy Graham, being on stage, and look at his hand. He is wearing the signet of a cardinal of the Catholic Church. It's not an accident that every year he went to Rome and kissed the Pope's ring. There's something that people that follow Billy Graham's crusade might want to have known. Do you understand that the Protestant church was created by Jesuits? I mean, do people understand that the Protestant church was created by Jesuits? There were fractures in the Catholic Church, and each one of those fractures was rounded up. Every fracture of the Catholic Church to create a Protestant, a protesting church, was rounded up, butchered, and killed. Even if they tried to sneak a Bible, they were killed. The Bible would have been in Latin. But every time that they tried to form a separate church, because of the crimes of the Catholic Church under the Habsburgs ran the Catholic Church for roughly 490 years. And the popes since have been from the same lines, either Habsburg, Merovingian, or Carolingian, the direct descendants of Constantine, the traitor. Actually, his son, the first Ashkenazi prince, but that's beside the point. For 490 years, I think it's 489. I always want to say that, or 91. But for 400 plus years, almost 500 years, every pope was a Habsburg. The same people, the same families that came out of Constantinople as Sabbatine Frankists. So, what you have, right? What you have is the same problems. You wonder why the Catholic Church has problems with pedophilia, has problems with totalitarianism, has problems with usury. It's because they're the same people. Always were. But when they tried to form a protesting church, what people today call reformist churches or Protestants, when they tried to do that, they were killed. They were hunted down and killed, and the Bibles were stolen. Some people were burnt. They'd handwrite the copies. They used the handwritten copies of the text to burn them as kindling. Okay? Then all of a sudden, we come up with a Jesuit reformer, because people were so discontent with the Catholic Church. They were absolutely infuriated with the Catholic Church and its actions and its violations of even the book, that they used a Jesuit priest to create the Protestant church. And he managed to do it. Now, there were a few of them who attempted to get the Bible. There were a few of them who attempted to create churches that were burnt. But you need to understand, they weren't burnt because they tried to create a church. They were burnt because they created a separation of the church. And then they tried to take church property. And they didn't pay fealty to the church. If they would have paid their tithes and they hadn't have tried to take church property, they most likely wouldn't have been killed. And finally, when they realized that they had no choice, right? When they realized they had no choice, it was Jesuits that created the Protestant churches. Do you think that's accidental that the only churches that survived to separate from the Catholic Church were Jesuit priests? Right? Now, you can go back and you can read Babylonian texts. You can read Sumerian texts. You can even read Egyptian texts. All right? These all predate any version of the Bible that they call the Bible. These texts from Babylonian times, from Sumerian times, and Egyptian times predate everything that they found that could possibly be biblical texts. All right? And you will find every detail, especially in the Old Testament, about Genesis and this and that and the other. But you will find every detail of the creation story and etc. in those texts, Babylonian, Sumerian, Egyptian. Why? Because those were all taken and incorporated into what it became the Bible in Constantinople. And you also find more details. If you go to the Sumerian text, you'll actually find more details about the flood. You'll find more details about the creation than you do in the Bible. Just like if you find the Apocrypha and the Lost Books and you read them, you'll find out that a lot of information that they didn't put in the biblical text is very relevant because it changes the meaning of many, many things. As a matter of fact, a lot of the old original text in the original language, if you translate it, have contradictory meanings to the 4th century and the 20th century adaptations. Okay? I say 4th century, 325, 380. So that's 4th century. But if you go back and look at the original texts in the original language, you'll find out that a lot of what you read is contradictory to the 4th century and technically 18th century translations and adaptations. Okay? It's that simple. It's not an accident. If you go to the Sumerian text, you'll find out a lot of what they try to tell you about the Latin and English Bible is completely errant. And then they'll try to tell you that the Bible existed first and the Sumerian and Babylonian were created afterwards to make the Bible look like it was fake. I don't say the Bible is fake. I just know for a fact that it came much later. Okay? It has nothing to do with fake or real. The fact of the matter is you've got apologists, and I have said this many times in my other podcasts. You would not need apologists in the Catholic Church and in the Protestant churches. They wouldn't need to apologize if there wasn't something wrong. I love the fact that they chose the term apologist. I'm not apologizing for knowing the facts. The Babylonian, Sumerian, and Egyptian texts predate the Bible of Constantine, of the Council of Nicea, by centuries. So, when you hear these apologists saying, oh, well, the Sumerian and Babylonian and Egyptian texts were imitating the Bible, it's physically impossible. Physically impossible for the Sumerian texts that predate the Nicene Bible by centuries to be an imitation. Just saying. Then you have the original language versus the translations. Even the translations into Greek and Latin are terrible. That's the first problem. Man, y'all listening to me, I love this. I'm watching these people pop in, pop out, trying to argue with me, and they can't. And they can't distract us. It's the reason why there's no comments being allowed or chat. It's not that I don't want to hear from everybody. I want to hear from everybody who has something positive to contribute. And I want people to be able to interact in a favorable way. But I do not want a bunch of people coming in here and just talking crap that they don't know about. I mean, like the fact that I just said the Sumerian texts predate the Council of Nicea's Bible by several centuries, almost 1,000, as a matter of fact. And that's the minimum, 1,000. But they would just go through the roof knowing that the Sumerian texts predate the Bible and that the Bible didn't even exist until after the Council of Nicea in 325 CE. But see, I know they believe. I say, man, them beliefs will get you in trouble every time. But anyway, so the original language is if you get the original language and you actually work off the original language, they call it Hebrew, I call it Babylonian because that's what it is. It's technically some kind of a cross between Babylonian and Canaanite language. It's not Hebrew because Hebrews didn't exist. Just want to point that out to you. The Hebrew, as we call them today, did not exist. You had Semites, which were Arabs, and you had Europeans. And then you had black Africans. Those three existed at the time. You didn't have what they call a Jew today. I just want to make that very, very clear. You did not have what they call a Jew today. You had Judeans. Those were people who followed the Torah. The Torah did exist. Just pointing that out. But you did not have, as a people, you did not have what they call Jews today, because they didn't exist. What you have today, now I'm not talking about later. I'm not talking about after Constantine when they went back in. I'm talking about what you have today is a completely different, even in what they call the biblical times of the Crusades. They had moved back in. Okay. But in the times that people talk about, you had black Africans, you had Semites, which are Arabs, and you had Europeans, which were white. And of course, you had the people from India, and then you had the Asians. But in that region that everybody talks about, you only had three choices. You had white, which would have been your Greeks and your northern people. You had your Arab people, and you had your Near Eastern people right there in Phoenicia and Turkey. And then you had your black Africans. So you were either Arab or white or black. That's the reason why they're still trying to kill the Ethiopians. I keep talking about them trying to kill the Ethiopians off, because the Ethiopians are one of the last true groups that descend from Jacob. Okay? And do you all realize that they have been trying to kill them off for 150 years? They even went as far as to try to sterilize them with injections. They want them gone, because that particular group in Ethiopia that are Judeans have the oldest copy of the handwritten Bible, one of the oldest temples in Africa and the Middle East. They want the Ethiopians that are one of the real descendants from Jacob gone, because they proved the point. They've been trying to kill them since 1940s. And they just went through and gave them injections to sterilize them. They didn't know the sterilization. It's GHB. Yeah, it's GHB. It attaches to the uterus and makes it so you can't get pregnant. It's called an abortion-affected drug. They did it to the Ethiopians. Just pointing that out to you. They did it in Kenya too. So you can look it up. Don't take my word for it. GHB. It's called an abortion-affected drug. They did it to the Kenyans. They did it to the Ethiopians. That's the reason why I think I said I thought there was a second lineage from Jacob that's still alive, right? The Ethiopians being one, the northern Kenyans being the other. There's two that are out in the open. The third would be in the jungle areas of Africa. But anyway, those would be the sons of Jacob, or the descendants of. Anyway, so the original language, if you read it, is very different than the translations. Why? Because first things first, it says we, not I. It says we. It says there are more than one God. People don't like me saying this, but when you say Elohim, there is no excuse. Everybody knows that that is a plural. And they say, oh, well, they used it that way because it's God. No, they didn't. They used it that way because there's more than one. You want an interesting subject? Go look up Morgue on YouTube. He found all the gods in the Bible. Okay? Like it, don't like it. You can go through the Bible as it is now and find the name of all those gods. And you can find out that they all were fighting, and they were all jealous, and they were all sadistic and heinous, genocidal, narcissistic. Just saying. But his name is Morgue, like a morgue. And you may not like the way he looks. You might not like the way he talks, but you can't argue with his research. He literally went through and found every god named in the Bible. And they called them gods. That's the other thing about the translations that you get today. if you go to the original language, each one of them, God was a Baal is a weird one because Baal, B-A-A-L, means Lord. It doesn't mean God. And you cannot tell if that is an individual or if that is a title. But Marduk's in there. Do you know in the original temple? Do you know in Solomon's temple, they actually had a statue of the female god, Yahweh's wife? Do y'all know this? In the original temple, there was a statue of Yahweh's wife. You never hear that, do you? But it's documented and it's in the book. Just saying. They didn't just have the Holy of Holies. They had statues, which are idols. And one of them was Yahweh's wife. Kind of reminds me of Astarte, honestly. Just pointing that out. Anyway, so the King James Version, let me say it this way. If you were a Christian, would you want George Carlin? Well, I probably would want the George Carlin version. I think Isaac Asimov did an amazing writing. But let me think of somebody. Would you want the Jeffrey Epstein version of the Bible? Would you just call it the J.E. Bible? Would you buy that? Would you buy the J.E. Bible, Jeffrey Epstein, knowing all the things that you do or don't know about him, and the hints and allegations and the rumors are not necessarily true, but what is true is even worse than the rumors? Would you buy a Jeffrey Epstein Bible, right? We'll call it the J.E.B. Would you buy that? Then why would you buy a KJV? Because King James was everything and more and worse than Jeffrey Epstein was. Most people don't like me saying that, but it is a fact. I would not want a J.E.B., a Jeffrey Epstein Bible. And King James and his associates were worse on most accounts than Jeffrey Epstein. Yet people swear by the King James Version, and they have no idea what he edited. You look at the King James Version and go back to the original text and look at the translations, you would have a heart attack to know how much was changed and how much is errant. Just from the original text to Greek, the original translation to Greek, 15,000 errors. Just from the original script to Greek, 15,000 translation errors. By the time it got to Latin, you know how the telephone game works? So it goes from the original text to Greek, and there's 15,000 errors that you can find. And then it goes from Greek to Latin. How many more errors? People get mad at me for saying this, but you know what? I have my master's degree in comparative religion and religious philosophy. And I used it to find the truth, not to get indoctrinated. Now, we have this thing called dispensation. All right? And we also have this thing called the Schofield. Schofield is as bad as King James as far as translation and ideologies. I'll really tick off some Christians on this one. But dispensationalism is a new thing. Dispensationalism didn't even exist until 1908 when the Zionists created the Federal Council of Churches. Just pointing this out. Dispensationalism did not ever exist until the late 1800s and the early 1900s, just like the rapture. The rapture was a very weird offset group that had associated with Zionist Jews, which weren't really Jews, they were Talmudists. There's another thing. If you have a Talmud and you're reading it, you cannot be a Torah-following Jew, a Judean. You're Talmudic, which means you're a Zionist. Anyway, so the rapture and dispensation never crossed anybody's mind until they started studying with Zionist Talmudics and Kabbalists. And then all of a sudden it became a thing. The rapture is not biblical. I don't care how many Left Behind movies they make. Okay? Just fact. I don't care how many Left Behind movies they make. The rapture is not biblical. Armageddon. Everybody's talking about Armageddon today. Wow. We got to have our Armageddon. We got to have our last battle. We have so many psychopaths in the White House in Washington, D.C. that they got to have their Armageddon, right? Well, we have three problems with Armageddon. Armageddon was a battle that was fought a long time ago. Armageddon is a battle that was fought a very long time ago. It was fought between Gog and the kingdom of Judah on the slave coast of Africa. And that valley that goes in between the mountains there was Gedi. Armageddon. It's another example of these people taking stories that were true and applying it to an area that doesn't apply to. Now they have a valley up there they call Megiddo. Another imitation. Just pointing that out to you, just like New Jerusalem where they're at. Jerusalem is in the Kalahari Desert under the dirt where it was left, under the sand. But anyway, Armageddon is a history, not a future. But they want to make it a future. That's what's dangerous about it. We have radical Zionist evangelicals, and we have radical Zionist Sabbatine Frankists that are working together, and they think that it is their job to do God's work and make Armageddon happen. Bring on the apocalypse, which they are actually by showing what they really are. They're revealing what they really are. That's what the apocalypse is. Apocalypse means to reveal. Well, the Zionist and the zealot Zionist evangelicals are showing what they really are. They hate everybody, apparently because they want to destroy God's creation. I think that if God wanted us to have a global war that destroyed everything and created a new Armageddon, he would arrange it. It wouldn't require people to make it happen. That is what Zionist evangelicalism is. Why is it Zionist evangelicalism? First word, Zionist. Or you can say evangelical Zionist. I don't give a crap which way you say it. Either way, Zionist is in it. Why is Zionist in it? Because of the Federal Council of Churches created in 1908 with Zionist funding. Just pointing out history, facts versus beliefs. The apocalypse means to reveal. It doesn't mean to destroy. It doesn't mean that everything gets destroyed. How the heck that got mistranslated and carried into the belief systems of people today is insane. Apocalypta, to reveal. It's a revelation. Has nothing to do with creating a global conflict and destroying everything. Again, the Sabbatine Frankist Zionists, which is B.B. Malachowski and his bunch, apparently a lot of them in Washington, D.C., along with the evangelical Zionists, think that they're better at planning things and doing things than the creator of all things. So they think that it's their job to make it happen. Okay? The evangelical Zionists and the evangelicals in general, because of this dispensation crap that was created in the late 1800s and just appeared out of nowhere, I think it might have something to do with Albert Pike. But anyway, my whole point here is the evangelical Zionist and the Zionist Sabbatine Frankist over there in the British Protectorate in Palestine. Of course, they're all over the place. They've scattered all over the place. But my whole point here is they think that they can do a better job of bringing on the Messiah than the Creator himself. They think that it is their job to bring on Armageddon and destroy everything so that we can have the rapture and the return of the Messiah. I think that if there is a creator, which I am pretty sure there is a creator, that he does not need our help figuring out when he wants to do something. Right? I'm reasonably certain he does not need our help. I hate to use the word he, but the creator of all things, the beyond, does not need our influence to decide when Armageddon, the battle of the world, is going to occur. nor does he need us to push it along. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure he would be absolutely PO'd that somebody thought to take it upon themselves to destroy his creation. And the intolerance and hate that these people are showing and calling themselves Christians is disgusting. Now, the prosperity doctrine. You notice the prosperity doctrine that came out back in the 90s and early 2000s. These are the people who say, send me the money and I'll pray for you to get prosperous. That's bullcrap. The prosperity doctrine is they're indoctrinating you to make them prosperous. They're indoctrinating you to make them prosperous so that they can have their $5 and $10 million homes and their luxury yachts and their luxury aircraft. That's what the prosperity doctrine is about. They're nuts. The 503c registration of your church it's a control of churches. It's by design. It controls what the church can and cannot say and be taught. If you violate those particular rules, right, you can have your 503 revoked. So like if you're in the church and you're a pastor and you say, what the government of the United States and Washington, D.C. is doing today is against the scriptures, and here's all the scriptures that point it out. If you did that in your church, you could have your 503c taken away, even if it is true, which it is. That's what the 503c does. It puts a choke collar on the church. If you are caught preaching an actual sermon out of the texts that talks about the evil in Washington, D.C., and how they're violating the tenets of your book, your 503c can be revoked. Very good example. They always tell you to turn the other cheek. Turn the other cheek if somebody slaps you. That's great. I agree. When you're in the position to turn the other cheek, you should. However, what don't they tell you? What's the one thing that they never include in their sermons? You are to stand against wickedness in high places. How many times do you hear that in the church today? Wickedness in high places. Raping kids, trafficking women, stealing babies, poisoning your food, killing people without cause, launching unprovoked wars. Wickedness in high places. You are to stand against wickedness in high places. But they never mention that scripture. They never mention that scripture, but they'll tell you that you're supposed to turn the other cheek and you're supposed to endure suffering. Well, you know what? We are supposed to endure suffering, but we're not supposed to tolerate someone else causing someone else to have suffering. We're supposed to do unto others as we want done unto us. Doesn't mean that we won't suffer. It just means that we should not tolerate children, especially. A person who does this to children should have what? A grindstone around their neck. Have you heard any Christian preachers talking about that? People who do this to children, people who would harm my children, should have the weight of a grindstone around their neck. Not forgiven, not let go, not turn the other cheek. Just saying. So, where am I at? There's something else I had. I guess that's enough. But let me go back to the beginning of this thing, because here's the note that I missed, and I wanted to point out before I end this conversation. Do you know the difference between Islam and evangelical or Zionist Christianity? You want to know the primary difference? They both do believe in an end-time war. They both understand that eventually that war is going to happen. The difference between Islam and Christian Zionists and the Zionists themselves is that the people of Islam believe that it will be the Creator's time. The Creator will decide when that final battle will be fought, and they will wait, and they will endure, which is what jihad actually means. Jihad doesn't mean go to war. Jihad doesn't mean kill. Jihad means to endure, to stand in the face right? Jihad means to stand in the face of attrition, to stand in the face of aggression, to stand in the face of destruction. That's what jihad means. It doesn't mean go kill. It doesn't mean go out and kill everybody. It doesn't mean go to war. Jihad means to stand in strength under the Creator, right? And the difference between Muslims and Zionists and Christian Zionists is that the Muslims believe that if they stand in the face of all the adversity, that when the final battle comes, they'll be victorious. But they'll wait. It's not their job to cause it to happen. While the Zionists and the evangelical Zionists and the evangelicals, I'm getting tired, think it's their job to make the final battle happen. Huge difference. One is aggression and hate and destruction of creation. That would be your Christian evangelicals and your Christian Zionists and your Zionists. Why? Because Sabbatean Frankist ideology, destroy everything. Whereas the Muslims say we will wait until Creator says it's time. And when it's time, his appointed time, the war will happen. In the meantime, we will apply jihad to our lives. We will stand in the face of the abuses, the attacks. So which is more evil? The one who wants to go out and destroy all of the creation in order to bring about a global war, the apocalypse, which is just Revelation. They want to bring about Armageddon. And they're going to make it happen. Or the ones who are willing to sit by and wait for his choice of the time. And I'm not a Muslim or a Christian. And damn sure not a Zionist. I'm just saying, all these lies that people have been told. Christians know about the Council of Nicea. That's the famous one they always talk about. Oh yeah, that's when they set up the Bible. But what they don't know is all the things that they took out of the Bible and changed. They also don't know about the Constantinople. They don't know about the Chalcedon. They don't know about the Third Constantinople. They don't know about the Constance. They don't know how many times the Bible was changed by these men in order to fit their purpose. They also don't realize that by the time the Council of Nicea happened, they were already being run by Sabbatean Frankists out of Constantinople. There are the facts. In brief, y'all, I could pull out my old book that I wrote. I could pull out my old notes, and I could give you a 10-hour lecture series on all the problems coming out of Constantinople into the Catholic Church, coming out of the Catholic Church into the faith of Islam. Please notice I didn't say much about it, but there is one thing that I will say. Everybody tries to tell everybody that Muhammad, the one who wrote the text for Islam, was uneducated and he was poor. That's impossible. His family were traders, traders, traders. They were merchants. All of the merchant class there were educated, were able to write and read. Couldn't be a merchant, it couldn't. It's just a fact. Muhammad's family were merchants. That means that he could read. That black stone that they go to, that comes from an older religion of the people that they wiped out using the merchants. Just like the Catholics used the merchants. Just like the Phoenicians used the merchants. Just like Constantinople, when it was taken over by the Sabbatean Frankists, used the merchants. Do you see the similarities here? I keep telling everybody the problems that we have now go all the way back to Phoenicia, Babylon, Canaan, and then all the way back down to the slave coast of Africa, to the real kingdom of Judea. And people won't listen. And for those of you who haven't heard me say this before, there is a short on YouTube where I show you the maps before they were changed in the 1800s that show you right where the kingdom of Judah and Gog and Magog were in Africa. And it's not anywhere that they're trying to tell you. They keep trying to tell you Persia and East India or West India is Gog and Magog. No. Gog and Magog is a land north of the kingdom of Judah, in the past to what is now the Kalahari, which used to have 7 great big rivers running through it. 7 great big rivers running through the Kalahari. Sound familiar? 4, 3 fed into 4, and then fed into 1. Just trying to tell you. The 7 rivers of the Kalahari is the past there between the kingdom of Judah was where Gog, the nation, and the capital, Magog, were at. And the kingdom of Judah is in the slave coast of Africa, and it's on those maps, by the way. It's a short feature that I put here on YouTube. You can just, I think it's less than 2 minutes, and I show you the maps. I don't ask people to believe me. I bring proof. That being said, I appreciate every last person who joined me. And like I said, I'd rather hear from you and be able to interact with you in the comments. But I cannot have people who do not know what they're talking about getting on here and trying to give me an indoctrinated belief system instead of facts. I just won't tolerate it. They don't know the facts, therefore they have beliefs. How many times have I said it? I'll say it again. I don't expect anybody to believe or disbelieve anything. That lie in the middle will get you killed. Know or don't know. And if you don't, find out. Mahe and I favor nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing absent from your lives that are needed. I came to you on the level. I was plumb with my words, and I leave you in the square, like I always do. You are all enough, and so am I. We are what we are, and that is always enough. Favor everybody.